This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers with Amy Worden, John Micek, and Pete DeCoursey, regular journalist contributors to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. We're doing our year-in review. All right, Amy, I'm going to turn to you. Reform. We had, after the infamous pay hike of July 7, 2005, we had several organizations created, Clean Sweep, Operation Clean Sweep, Democracy Rising, Rock the Capitol, just to mention three, and a whole series of reform agenda items thrown out on the table, picked up by incumbents running for re-election, picked up by challengers running against incumbents. Even Governor Rendell is now a reformer. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Well, I think there's no doubt that reform has, it's sort of been like a line in a fairy tale. I mean,
right.
Something that always sounded good, but
right.
But there was never anything behind it. Right, never anything going on behind it. It was a nice campaign promise. Well, finally, we're seeing actual reforms taking place. I mean, just in this year alone, you actually have some significant pieces of legislation to point to, and specifically lobbying reform, finally at long last, a reality. Now Pennsylvania is no longer the only state without a lobbying reform law, and then and then you had and gambling reform. They dealt with issues still lingering with the gambling bill. So. All
right, Peter, but they have a long way to go. I mean, Governor Rendell, and you all wrote this story, just recently came out with the things he wanted to do. I mean, reduce the size of the legislature and term limits. I mean, it's one thing to do lobbying reform. It's another thing to do the constitutional changes.
Take the power of redistricting away from the
that's right, another reform. Go ahead.
I think it's going to be very hard for him to pass any of those things. 50 new members or 50 not. I mean, I just think it's going to be very difficult to pass any of those reforms, and I think one of two things will happen. Either the reform movement will sort of crest and fade away, or you'll see just a huge 2008 push, and then after that I think you might see I think we're still one election cycle away from getting the kind of constitutional convention you need to push a lot of those reforms. But I mean, one of the things that I thought was fascinating with those groups is if you look at those groups that you talked about and the others, there's a clear dichotomy. One group, Operation Clean Sweep, its founder, Russ Diamond, decided he wanted to basically use it to set himself up to run for governor. And once he did, it died. It just faded away, and it took him with it. And the other groups, which kept focused not on themselves, but on these issues, are still here and are still thriving.
You agree with that?
I do. I think also, I mean, there are sort of two levels to reform here. You've got these broader sort of structural things like lobbying reform and term limits and reducing the size of the legislature. Going on underneath that, though, you also have sort of internal procedural things, which is what caused a lot of the revulsion over the pay raise in the first place. This idea that
done in the middle of the night,
conducting their business in the middle of the night, foisting amendments on people without any proper notice. And now the new guys are in control, particularly in the Senate. Senator Scarnati, the new president pro tem from Warren County, is saying that he wants to change a lot of that MO, which is what caused people to get disgusted with the way business was conducted.
Right. And I think, and that's a really good, that's a positive sign that you're actually seeing the whole way of doing business changing. It not requiring legislation, but actually going back to really what they're supposed to be doing.
But you know what's sort of surprising? That it's likely if they changed the process, if they were more open, if they agreed that they wouldn't put bills up at 2 in the morning, if they agreed that before they voted on these things, you all in the press corps would have these, to be able to write the stories about them before they actually voted, I don't think it would change very much anyway. Would it change the substance if they were more transparent? I don't think so. Do you?
Yeah, I do, and here's why. I think that so many of these bills have surprises in them and have things thrown in to give, $10 million to this. There's the example of the bill that got, the Comcast $40 million got thrown into at the last minute. Even after all this reform stuff, they threw the liquor for racinos in at the last minute. The fact is that there are a bunch of ideas that and leaders will tell you this, that if you don't do them fast, you don't get them done at all. And so, I mean, I think the real question here is how effective will it be if they really do wait 2 days after they? I mean, I think what you'll see is that these guys will try it for 6 months or a year. Then they'll discover that the reason Purgell and Jubileer and Vian did it the way they did it was because it's the most easiest way on the leaders to pass it.
All right, when we come back, final segment, Governor Rendell prospects for a second term after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.